Well, hello to all you amazing people out there, and especially those of you who watch and support this channel. It is that time of the week again where I get to share with you some of my favorite retro video games, mostly from the 90s, since those were the years of my childhood and earliest introduction to gaming and full nerdhood, as well as to take a deep dive into yet another interesting bit of information which I personally find fascinating. Since today's video once again revolves around the great dragon of martial arts cinema, Bruce Lee, I figured why not show off some of my amazing skills at playing at his most famous video game clone, Forrest Law from Tekken 3, which was developed by Namco and released in the year 1997 for arcades and the Sony PlayStation console. Now admittedly, Law, be it Forrest or his father Martial Law from any of the Tekken games, is my favorite character to play as, since I'm actually pretty good at using him.
Round 2, fight! You win. You're pretty good.
You're pretty good. Pretty good.
You lose.
Oh, see, there you go. There you go.
The lies.
There you
the
go.
Lies.
This bitch.
The
I'm
lies.
telling you. Trifling.
Anyway, moving on, today's topic, as I had already mentioned, is about Bruce Lee. Yeah, or rather his many clones. Yes, you heard that right. Bruce Lee had a bunch of clones, which randomly began popping up in martial arts movies right after his death. Now, of course, they weren't literal clones that were grown in a lab. Though there is actually one of these movies that does have a plot like that, called The Clones of Bruce Lee, released in the year 1980.
The Clones of Bruce Lee.
The respected and loved Chinese superstar Bruce Lee has just died.
Starring Dragon Lee, Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lai.
Suddenly and without warning, he fell into a coma today.
The Clones of Bruce Lee brings a new dimension to martial arts films.
Scientists and police made a momentous decision. They would create the clones of Bruce Lee. These identical specimens of the late Bruce Lee are trained in all the martial arts through scientific techniques. The Clones of Bruce Lee, starring Bruce Lai, Bruce Lee, Bruce Tai, and Dragon Lee.
But in reality, sometime after the dragon's tragic and sudden death in 1973, there seemed to be quite a few films that appeared in movie theaters around the world that would have his name and face on the promotional poster, but upon watching the actual film, one would be disappointed to find that it isn't actually Bruce Lee himself, but rather some random Chinese dude who kinda looks like him? Sort of? Maybe?
No.
If you haven't seen it yet, I did already make an entire video on the life of Bruce Lee and what may have been the real reason for his death some time back. Link in the comments down below and at the end of this episode if you want to go check that one out. I won't go into too much detail about his life or achievements since I already covered all that in that other video, but to briefly summarize, after becoming the massive star he was and forever cementing his name in the annals of martial arts and film history, so much so that some people literally worship him to this day, he would sadly pass away in the year 1973 after falling into a coma as a result of taking some pain medication to deal with a severe headache. On the way to the hospital though, he didn't wake up and paramedics were unable to revive him, and he was pronounced dead on the 20th of July of that same year. At the time, his death was regarded as extremely sudden and mysterious, since here was a man who was still quite young and seemingly very healthy and fit. However, it is now speculated that he may have died from a cerebral edema or swelling of the brain, which may have been caused by the painkiller, but it would only be revealed in the year 2021 through a series of letters written by Bruce to his friend and fellow martial artist Bob Baker that he may have had a pretty bad relationship with drugs, and most notably with cocaine.
Remember, winners don't do drugs.
These new revelations have led many medical experts to now believe that the damage to his brain may have been caused by the prolonged and frequent use of cocaine and other hard drugs, and that the painkiller he took on that fateful day of 1973 may have simply worsened whatever harm had already been done and ultimately caused his death. Now, due to his extremely sudden death at the height of his fame, the Hong Kong film industry was left in a state of extreme panic mode, since Bruce Lee, being the massive international star that he was, raked in quite a pretty penny for any directors, producers and actors that were involved in his films. As much as martial arts movies had existed before Bruce, and there were already big name stars like Lo Ye, Angela Mao, Cheng Pei Pei, David Chang, Leung, and Jimmy Wang Yu in the late 1960s and early 1970s, none of them had gained the globe-spanning success that Bruce Lee had, with Bruce having single-handedly made martial arts movies into a worldwide pop culture phenomenon. And for all the haters out there, while I too sometimes speculate about his actual fighting ability, MMA would not exist today without Bruce Lee, since it was Bruce's contributions to the martial arts world, his promotion of said fighting arts in his films, and his ideas and philosophies about combining different styles together to make something more effective that basically inspired many people to even take up combat sports to begin with, and to try to develop the various techniques of these sports even further. So say what you will about Bruce Lee's fighting ability, but like it or not, he's the reason the UFC and other fight promotions are as popular as they are today. Otherwise, we'd all still be stuck watching point karate tournaments inside school halls. Now, after his death, a pretty big hole was left in the Hong Kong kung fu movie industry, and movie directors and producers scrambled to find someone that could fill that hole and basically become the next Bruce Lee. And this was essentially the beginning of a bizarre film genre that evolved from the sudden absence of Asia's biggest star ever from the 1970s, that today is referred to as Bruceploitation, or in more understandable terms, films that try to exploit the success and legacy of the late dragon for a quick buck. Enter the clones of Bruce Lee.
First of all, congratulations, Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
The idea behind these so-called Bruceploitation films was to attempt to fool hardcore fans from around the world into watching movies that somewhat resembled an authentic Bruce Lee production, but which would have quite a few glaring differences. The main one being that none of the lead actors in these movies even looked like the legend himself, but they could at least kinda imitate him, and if filmed at just the right angle with just the right hairstyle, maybe, just maybe, all of the late Dragon's fans would be convinced enough to believe that perhaps Bruce Lee pulled a Tupac or Notorious B.I.G. and somehow kept releasing new movies every year even after he had already passed away. Maybe via already having made these hundreds of films before his death in 1973. But unfortunately, most people were not fooled and were able to spot the facade quite easily, which is what led to the terminology of Bruceploitation being used to describe this blatant attempt by Hong Kong movie makers to cash in on Bruce's legacy and fame after his tragic and sudden passing.
What can we do? Only money that I want.
The problem is that even though many of them were basically just low-budget exploitation films with extremely crappy visuals, there were actually some that were quite good, and I would even go so far as to admit that there are a handful of Bruceploitation movies that I kinda enjoyed. One of the key traits of this weird trend was that many of the lead actors in these movies, who were seemingly all hired for doing their best Bruce Lee impersonations, all ended up taking on stage names that were as close to Bruce Lee's name as possible, or at least Bruce Lee adjacent.
Bruce Lee's untimely death shocked the entire world. In Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger, Lee names his successor, introducing a new star, Bruce Lee.
I'll have to find out if there was some foul play, and if there was, I'll avenge! I'll avenge! You people killed Bruce Lee? I don't know, but I didn't. If you've lied to me, I'll come back and kill you! Where is the tape?
I don't know.
Once more. Where'd you hide it?
I told you, I don't have it.
Its premiere engagement in Hong Kong, critics proclaim that Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger possesses some of the most masterful kung fu footage ever filmed.
That's him. At least you don't think that I'm Bruce.
Happens I knew Bruce.
You did?
I must say, you do look alike. Really.
Not only do they look alike, they fight alike. Bruce Lee on a desperate mission to avenge the death of his master and to answer the painful question of why did Bruce Lee die?
Some of the more famous Lee clone actors were as follows. Ho Chung-tao, whose stage name was Bruce Lee, ending with an I. This needs to be emphasized because, as you will find out eventually, there were a bunch of Bruce Lees as well, each with a different spelling. Ho Chung-tao, or Bruce Lee, was born in the year 1950, and in the early 1970s, he became a stuntman in both the Taiwanese and Hong Kong film scene. It was only after Bruce Lee's death, however, that his own career would skyrocket, since Chinese directors, casting agents, and film producers were quick to recognize his resemblance to the late Dragon, especially if he stood at a certain angle, and decided to capitalize off this by obviously making a bunch of movies with him in the lead role, pretending to be the real Bruce Lee. One of the first of such movies that Bruce Lee would star in was called Super Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, released in 1974, and he would follow this up with at least 23 other knockoff Bruce Lee movies, which included 2 unofficial sequels to the late Dragon's second film, Fist of Fury, right up until the year 1979, with his final Bruceploitation movie being Blind Fist of Bruce Lee. He did later on state in a handful of interviews that he was initially very happy for the numerous opportunities that came his way, and the success it garnered him in the Hong Kong film industry, believing that it would have ended up opening the door to more diverse roles in other films. However, he would also express regret and frustration over the fact that he was only ever seen as just another Bruce Lee clone, and felt that the directors at the time were simply using him to make money off of Bruce Lee's legacy, but by this point it was too late for him to back out. After Blind Fist of Bruce, he would attempt to strike out on his own in the 1980s with other films like The Chinese Stuntman and Dragon Force, but sadly by the end of that decade, the Bruceploitation fad had faded and his popularity waned, causing him to retire early in the year 1991 after making one final movie called Kickboxer the Champion, which was yet another shitty attempt at trying to cash in on the success of Jean-Claude Van Damme's Kickboxer movie from 1989.
Friend, as a martial art director, tell the producer, said, you see, Ho Chong Dao, that's my real name. Huh? He looks like Bruce Lee in this side. Huh? And producer said, hey, looks not bad, huh? And my friend said, he can fight, can stunt, but a new man, maybe acting is not so good, but you can train him. Later, the producer tell me, next movie, you will be leading actor. Jimmy Shaw gave me the English name called Bruce Lee, L.I. But I don't like it because I can act him, but I cannot to be him.
Remember the movie Kung Fu Hustle from 2004, which is arguably one of the greatest action comedy films of all time? Well, aside from having already made an entire video about it, and one of its most memorable characters being the landlady of Pigsty Alley with the legendary Lion's Roar Kung Fu ability, link in the comments if you haven't watched it yet. It turns out that there is another character in that film which has had quite a long career as both a martial artist and a movie star, and that would be the terrifying Kung Fu master who could stop bullets with his fingers, called the Beast. The Beast is actually played by an actor named Leung Choi-sang, who was born in the year 1948. After having learned both Goju Ryu karate and Wing Chun while growing up, he would eventually try his hand at Kung Fu movies in the early 1970s. And while he did somewhat have a successful career between 1971 and 1973, it was only after Bruce Lee's death where he too would see his success blow up in a massive way. Since he also had a pretty good Bruce Lee impression, he adopted the stage name of Bruce Leung, and while he was actually way shorter than Bruce Lee, looking a bit like a slightly taller midget that could throw hands, he would go on to star in a number of Bruceploitation movies between 1974 and 1979. Some of the most notable ones being Call Me Dragon, Bruce Lee D-Day at Macau, The Dragon Lives Again, and Enter Three Dragons. Unlike Bruce Lee though, Bruce Leung was able to have a successful career, even long after he stopped playing as an on-screen Bruce Lee clone, since he made sure to be cast in other roles as well, and also even going on to direct and produce his own films, proving himself to not be a simple one-trick pony. He did however retire temporarily with a shit ton of money in the bank in 1988, but as mentioned before, he would make a comeback in 2004 as the Beast in Kung Fu Hustle, and continue to make more movies right up until the year 2020, with his last and final film before retiring for good being called Heroes, where he plays an elderly out-of-shape Kung Fu master who, despite his age, still has a few tricks up his sleeve.
Sure about that? Because I'm not gonna tell you.
The role of being a fake Bruce Lee on screen wasn't just reserved for Chinese actors though. Even actors from other countries had their chances at mimicking the mannerisms of the legendary Kung Fu Dragon. Two other examples would be Korean actors Kim Tae-chung, who took on the stage name of Dong Leung, which was also the name of Bruce Lee's character in the movie Way of the Dragon, and Kyo Ryong, who would take on the stage name of Dragon Lee. While Dragon Lee would have far more success in his own fake Bruce Lee movies, his fellow countryman Kim Tae-chung would become more known for playing one of the many stand-in actors that would assist Warner Brothers in finishing Bruce Lee's incomplete film called Game of Death, which was such a shitty attempt at doing so, they even had a cardboard cutout of Bruce Lee for one of the scenes in the very beginning of the film. Kim Tae-chung would also later star in a pretty awesome sequel called Game of Death 2 in 1981, and at least two more Bruceploitation movies called Jackie and Bruce to the Rescue and the American martial arts action production No Retreat, No Surrender in 1986, wherein he played the ghost of Bruce Lee who comes back from the dead to teach a suburban American kid Kung Fu, and which also had a young, fresh-faced Jean-Claude Van Damme playing the villain before his breakout role in Bloodsport 2 years later. Kim Tae-chung would eventually leave the film world behind after the 1980s and become a successful businessman in South Korea, but sadly he would pass away in 2011 at the age of 54 from stomach hemorrhaging. As for his friend Dragon Lee, it turns out he's still pretty involved in the film industry, but after his Bruceploitation career dwindled, he moved back to South Korea and continued making films there as a producer and a TV star.
So this is your Kung Fu? Do you want to challenge me?
There were even a few attempts at trying to create a black Bruce Lee back in the 1970s and 1980s, with one of the more famous examples being actor Jim Kelly, who you may know from Enter the Dragon, but also from the hit animated sitcom The Boondocks, where a character named Bushido Brown is based off him. Jim Kelly would predominantly star in what was then known as blaxploitation movies, low-budget action thrillers which were targeted towards black American audiences. Now, apparently Jim and Bruce were friends in real life before his death, but it is safe to say that Jim definitely tried, at least in his own way, to mimic the mannerisms and fighting style of the late Dragon in many of his films.
Gonna set me up?
Then there was also martial arts legend and fellow blaxploitation movie actor Ron Van Cleef, who would travel all the way to Hong Kong to act in at least two Bruceploitation movies called The Black Dragon and The Black Dragon's Revenge, or in some regions, The Black Dragon revenges the death of Bruce Lee. The only difference being is that he didn't try to act like a Bruce Lee clone, rather this latter film revolved around him trying to solve the mystery behind Bruce Lee's death, which of course capitalized on a rumor that circulated at the time that Bruce Lee may have been killed by the Triads or Chinese Mafia. In 1985, we would also get Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon, which as a South African, I had seen way too many times since it played over and over and over again on local TV stations, especially on ETV's Friday Action Night double feature. This movie saw American amateur kickboxer Timak playing the role of a Bruce Lee obsessed martial artist named Leroy Green, alongside then famous pop star Vanity as his love interest in the film. Sadly though, despite the success of this film and his on-screen charisma, Timak never became a big star, and The Last Dragon seems to have been his only film credit to date. And these aren't the only examples of Bruceploitation and people cashing in on the legacy and success of the late and great Bruce Lee, with even some famous names within the martial arts action film industry like Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen, Jet Li and Sammo Hung doing the exact same thing. Very early in his career, Jackie Chan would be casting yet another attempt at making a Fist of Fury sequel called New Fist of Fury in 1976, which more or less featured the exact same cast as the original Bruce Lee film. The only problem was that Jackie Chan simply couldn't do what Bruce Lee did, and wasn't very good at imitating him either. Thus the film performed very poorly at the Hong Kong box office, and Jackie, feeling extremely frustrated, decided to break his contract with director Lo Wei, who was also responsible for directing Bruce Lee's first movie titled The Big Boss, as well as Fist of Fury. Little did he know that in doing so he was playing with his life, since Lo Wei had connections to the Triads. But if you wish to find out more about that, you can check out the other link in the comments below for another video I made detailing Jackie Chan's problems with the Hong Kong Sun Yi-on Triads. Then there's the case of Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan's lifelong friend and fellow martial arts superstar. See, Sammo Hung is actually the one who is largely responsible for Jackie Chan even having a movie career to begin with, since they both studied at the same Chinese drama academy, where they learned stage acting, martial arts, and a wide variety of other skills to do with Chinese Peking opera. It was Sammo who entered the movie industry first as a stuntman, fight choreographer and an assistant director, way back in 1966, eventually landing his own lead roles and producing his own films in the early 70s, paving the way for his other drama academy buddies like Yuen Biao and Jackie Chan. You may have also seen him in Enter the Dragon at the very beginning of the film. It turns out that when Bruce Lee started working for producer Raymond Chow's film company Golden Harvest, he and Sammo Hung became close friends. However, according to some stories, while on the set of Enter the Dragon, they had some kind of falling out, which greatly soured their relationship, and thus after his death, Sammo Hung would also attempt to capitalize on the Bruceploitation fad of the 1970s by making two films called Enter the Fat Dragon 1 and 2, where he himself would play a fat Bruce Lee clone. However, there are some scenes in the film that suggest he never did this out of disrespect or mockery, but rather wanted to create a new comedic spin on the Bruceploitation trope, with one scene showing him beating up a Bruce Lee clone who thinks too highly of himself and proclaiming there will only ever be one Bruce Lee. Which makes me feel like, despite not ending off on good terms before his death, Sammo Hung still had a lot of respect for his old friend Leung, the Little Dragon, which, in case you didn't know, is Bruce Lee's Chinese name.
我話俾你知，李小龍係我心目中嘅英雄偶像，唔能夠俾你破壞。 如果你想學佢，就要用多啲腦。叉！哼，死肥仔，打我大佬！哎呀！哇！
Donnie Yen and Jet Li would also have their own spins on the Bruceploitation fad in their early careers in the 90s. By this time, the weird trend had completely faded away. However, Jet Li would star in at least one film that would have some connection to Bruce Lee, but rather than being a simple cash grab that attempted to bank on the late Dragon's legacy, the movie Fist of Legend, which was released in 1994, would instead pay homage to the martial arts legend by essentially being a more expanded remake of his second film, Fist of Fury. And while Jet Li doesn't exactly do the whoops and yells that Bruce Lee was famous for, he at least does attempt to copy his fighting style in the fight scenes, although adding his own sort of kickboxing or sanda flair to it. Donnie Yen, on the other hand, had been in a bunch of films and even TV shows where he pays homage to Bruce Lee, who it turns out he remains a massive fan of to this day, and it's quite evident in some of the moves and stances Donnie Yen does in many of the fight scenes in his movies. Three very notable examples are the Fist of Fury TV show from 1995, where just like Jet Li did in Fist of Legend, just 1 year prior, he plays the same character that Bruce Lee did in the original film, the Chinese folk hero Chen Zhen, who decided he's had enough of Japanese aggression in the 1930s and decides to bring down the pain on every single motherfucker wearing a karate gi within 10 meters. He would also make a movie sequel in 2010 called Legend of the Fist, The Return of Chen Zhen, where he would don the same outfit that Bruce Lee wore in his early career as Kato in the American-produced Green Hornet TV series back in the mid-1960s. And lastly, he would make another film in 2020 called Enter the Fat Dragon, which bears no relation to the previously mentioned Sammo Hung movies, but which still pays homage to Bruce Lee, in that his CGI fat suit self wears the same yellow tracksuit that Lee wore in the incomplete filmed footage of The Game of Death. And the list as always could go on and on. There have been many examples of Bruceploitation throughout the years, and the trend still continues to this day across various forms of media, and once in a while you do always end up seeing an actor who is basically just another Bruce Lee clone, such as Andrew Koji in Warrior or Danny Kwok Chan, who bears a really uncanny resemblance to Bruce and has even portrayed him or a character based off him multiple times, like in Shaolin Soccer, the Legend of Bruce Lee TV show, and in at least 2 of the Ip Man films, which starred Donnie Yen as the lead, since Bruce Lee was in fact a student of the real-life Chinese Wing Chun master Ip Man, and those films are loosely based on his life. Even comedian Stephen Chow's character in Kung Fu Hustle, at least towards the end, somewhat resembles Bruce Lee as well. But one could at least notice a more respectful difference in the way modern portrayals of everyone's beloved Kung Fu Dragon are compared to those from the 1970s, where it all seemed to be just one big cash grab. That is unless you're Quentin Tarantino making Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That guy? That guy.
Not bad, Kato. Try that again.
And as mentioned before, aside from Bruce Lee, Dragon Lee, Bruce Leung and Tong Leung, there were many other actors who all adopted some variation of Bruce Lee's name during the 1970s Bruceploitation craze, with some pretty wild examples like Bronson Lee, who was a Japanese actor named Tadashi Yamashita, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lie with an AI instead of just an I, Bruce Lee, Saro Lee, Bruce Lie with a Y, Bruce Tai, Brute Lee, Myron Bruce Lee, Lee Bruce, and Bruce Lee, and so many more. I wonder at which point did they realize they had gone too far.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more! Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop!
On one hand, I do think this entire obsession with Bruce Lee and him literally becoming an entirely separate film genre is kinda weird, but on the other hand, I also kinda understand. There is simply no denying the absolute charisma, star power and on-screen presence that Bruce Lee brought to each of his films, not to mention how in his extremely short lifespan, he became one of the most famous people in all of movie history, as well as having had an enormous impact on both action films and martial arts as a whole. While other big name action stars have come and gone over the years, no one will ever come as close to the lasting legacy that this short Chinese guy from Hong Kong had built over just 4.5 movies, the half being Game of Death, which was incomplete due to his death. Anyway, that's it for today's video, and as always, if you enjoy what I do here, please consider leaving a like and maybe a comment on what your favorite Bruce Lee or Bruce Lee clone movie is. And if you want to see more of my content, maybe check out some of my playlists and perhaps subscribing if you haven't already. I release new long form videos every Friday and chopped up shorts of the best bits from each longer video from Monday to Thursday, where I cover basically anything I personally find cool and interesting, from kung fu movies, scientific discoveries, historical events, UFO incidents, conspiracy theories, comic books, anime, and Warhammer because Warhammer is fucking awesome, and so much more, coupled with some retro game nostalgia from the 90s and early 2000s. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Salagahle and stay well.
Oh, here I am. But I came not because I'm afraid of your threat. I just want to meet the man who's stupid enough to write a letter like that. Come on then, let's get it over with. Remember, Kung Fu is the art of self-defense. I'm not interested in killing. I just want to prove how bad your kicks are.
You must be talking about yourself.
That's what we call control. Something you may never understand.
Same, but different. But still same.
Ha ha ha.
Thank you. Konnichiwa.